Hello and welcome to Table Talk, a show where I chat with other creators in the TTRPG space about how they run their tables. I'm Danger Dangers, the host and GM of D&Dark, and joining us at the table today are the winners of the Best Podcast Host category of the 2024 Crit Awards, Amaan and Anorak from the Infinite Tavern podcast. Hello!
Hey, Dan.
Hello.
Thank you for having us, actually.
Thank you so much for being here. To get started, can you tell us a little bit about yourselves, your award, and your show, The Infinite Tavern?
Well, never thought I'd be on the receiving end of this question, first of all. I am Anorak, or Raghav, as I'm known in the ordinary world. And I've been DMing for around more than 3 years now. It's almost 4. I'm a forever DM. I've DM'd around 10 campaigns so far. And I'm currently DMing 3 of my homebrew campaigns. And also the actual play for Jack the Ripper in Call of Cthulhu. And so the Infinite Tavern podcast started when me and another friend of mine just discussing about how we could just have our regular players in one separate Discord server. And very soon I just started including all my players. Like my games used to get filled very quickly. So I just used to call people into the server so that we could just get a place to play. So, we started that, and Amaan joined a little later in one of my time loop mini campaigns. A few years later, Amaan was, moved to admin by then. And we were just discussing on the Hobbit Hole. The general channel in our tavern is called the Hobbit Hole. We are like huge Lord of the Rings fans.
It's kind of a prerequisite.
Oh, you'd be surprised. Dan.
Oh, yeah.
There are so many people who
so many people who are not into LOTR, haven't seen LOTR.
And we were just talking about random D&D stuff and random thought about, what if we made this a podcast? What if people just heard our bullshit?
So we used to hang out in Hobbit Hole a lot because especially both of us work night shifts a lot. So we used to be in the Hobbit Hole and chatting about D&D and all the latest things that we are watching, what inspires us, some mechanics or some lore, all of that. And there's a YouTube sketch called This Could Be a Podcast. So we thought, let's just do it. If somebody's going to listen, they're going to listen. Otherwise, we're just going to chat. It started out in January of 2024. We did a couple of recordings, and I very bravely took on the role of, I have some editing experience. So let me edit this. I did not expect it to be such a big load because up till then I had only worked as freelance, once a few months. But both of us did not expect the kind of response that we got, not just from our server, but the entire community. There were people who were bigging us up. Like, hey, go listen to this podcast. It's really good and all of that. I know I'm tooting my own horn, but the response was crazy. And Kumi from the Pigeon Killers, she started to promote us hey, these guys are talking, go talk to them, check them out. And they also petitioned us to be nominated for the Crit Awards. And after we got nominated, first of all, we were in great company.
Oh, there's some fantastic shows involved with the Crit Awards. It's a really great pool of people.
Seriously, the special shout out and thanks to Ivy for actually creating this, because it has quite literally almost changed my entire TTRPG life, our TTRPG lives.
And even if we didn't win, right, our idea was to grab as many guests as we can. This just gave us contacts to a lot of guests as well, including Don Marshall, which basically turns out to be one of my favorite episodes so far.
It was so fun talking to John, and thanks to the community who voted for us, I became the favorite host of this podcast.
So
yes,
he thinks.
yes,
so he thinks.
Yes, Anorak, we're going there.
You might go there, but you already know who the favorite host is. That's why you just keep trying to mention it so that you could just change their minds.
I cast Fireball.
Sure.
So kidding aside, listening to your podcast a little bit, you have some very solid interviews that you do. And one of the things that you touched on a little bit is being based in India. The TTRPG hobby is relatively new to the scene there. So I want to pick your brains about what led you to getting involved and what does the hobby and culture look like on that half of the world?
So I got into D&D because of CR, Critical Role. D&D, again, it's very relatively new, and it's almost confined to spaces where people can converse in English. I feel like that's one of the biggest hurdles that TTRPG has to overcome for it to, actually permeate to the wider audience in India. Because first of all, role play is almost like taboo in our culture. Like, you are playing as someone else doing what? You're casting spells. It's almost like what happened in the 70s with D&D and the United States. Like, it was like a satanic panic, I think it was called. It isn't like that, but it's something like, that's what is it? Why don't you go play chess?
Or why don't you just go study?
Why don't we go travel, hang out? And why are we sitting around for 4 hours?
It's definitely a hobby that's hard to sell to people that aren't already involved or that understand the appeal. So I'm grateful for things like Critical Role or like Dimension 20, any of the big shows. I know that that's in the States, a lot of people get exposed to the hobby that way. So I'm very grateful that stuff like that exists to help sell and translate what the appeal of it is. So it's awesome that you got in through that avenue. With it still being somewhat of a taboo, how has that kind of affected your tables and like what you have to do to go through organizing it, how you find people to bring into the hobby, things like that?
It was tough at the beginning. So I got into this thing. I had no friends growing up. I started having friends after I turned 18, like in college. And even then, we were more into techie stuff, coding and all of that. And I was more into reading books or writing stories and everything. And it was around the time I started watching Big Bang Theory. That was when I discovered Dungeons and Dragons. And that was when shows like Community and Stranger Things also got popular. And yeah, that just solidified my interest in Dungeons and Dragons because I absolutely love Lord of the Rings. I have entire collections of Lord of the Rings books. And the Infinite Tavern logo is natural 20 with 20 written in Elvish.
That's fantastic. I love that.
And yeah, I just wanted some players. And I tried looking around my college and I found no one. And I just forced my friends to play D&D, but they played, but it wasn't much of an interest. I had to roll all their dice for them.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. Plus, I was a new DM. I didn't know how D&D worked.
You saw Abed and were like, I guess that's how you DM. You roll all the dice.
That was my only source, dude. What can I do?
Yeah, fair.
And this was also around the time I fell in love with DMing more than playing. And I went on to D&D posts on Instagram, commenting that if anyone wants to play and are looking for players, I'm ready to DM. I went on different channels over there trying to get players, and luckily I did. In a Harry Potter channel, I got like 5 players there, and they did a whole campaign of Lost Minds of Vandalva. And one of them was the one who brought me into Daisies and Dragons, which is currently the largest TTRPG community in India. I found my community and I started building, Infinite Tavern slowly after that. And I started building and Amaan joined in, and it's like we have an awesome community at this point.
So then with pulling the players from social media and from the internet, do you mostly play online or in person?
I'll come to your question, Dan. Just pointing out, why it's not big in India. I feel like in India there is like a small board gaming culture kind of in India. What board gaming basically provides is a certain set of rules that you can follow and you can do those moves and then you get ahead, you earn points and you win the game. Comprehending a role-playing game where you're trying to finish a story or make a story with meaningful choices, that's not unheard of, but like that's
very rare.
That is very rare. And it in Indian culture, especially as growing up, you have to follow rules. This is what you're supposed to become. You're supposed to study, become an engineer, then you have won.
I feel called out. Also, that it's not popular actually. Even though there were shows, right? It's not that everyone watches these shows. So when I tried to introduce D&D to these people, right? When I told them it's a fantasy RPG game, they joined it first. And once they found out that it's not a game that you play on your phones, it's not a game it's not a video game, and it involves math. they just yeeted themselves out again.
And like India has a huge gaming community. Like video game community is crazy in India. Everybody plays games one way or another. But you get quick gratification out of those games. You play PUBG or Valorant or whatever people play. I don't play video games, honestly. So they can get quick satisfaction out of it. You can play so many rounds in a game. Whereas in a TTRPG, maybe if you're in combat, a round can take a lot of time if you have like 4 or 5 players. We don't have the patience.
And also, there was this whole thing where, the word nerd or a geek has been completely turned into a negative term for a very long time.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
still is to an extent in India.
Yeah, and people were embarrassed to, admit that they were a nerd or a geek. It wasn't until recently that, it started turning a little positive. To call someone a nerd or a geek being a compliment is something that is starting recently.
Even in the States, that's still largely a thing. Even though role-playing games like Dungeons and Dragons are a lot more common here and now, it's still got a little bit of a stigma attached to it, left over from the Satanic Panic. It still can't really shake that association. And even though that type of role-playing game is more cemented into our culture here, we still run into very similar things when I introduce people to the hobby of like, okay, so this is a game, how do I win? There's a running joke in a personal game that I do every time we sit down to start a session. I make a roll to win D&D for the day. But getting people on that same page, I can completely understand where that disconnect would be and why it would be really difficult to kind of bridge that gap.
But it's starting to change.
Yeah. So anyone who's listening out there, if someone calls you a nerd, know that you're already better than them.
It's a badge of honor.
It's a badge of honor, exactly.
Absolutely.
I'm sorry, I completely forgot your question. I was going to talk about that as well.
In terms of like getting people involved in your games, I was asking if you're playing more online, using the internet and social media to run your games. Are you meeting up with people in person, and like what your community looks like?
So that has started to change because of initiatives done by many great people. It started out mainly by board game cafes who put out these events out every weekend. Like, hey, there's a TTRPG event happening. Come play D&D with us. We're going to this cafe, or they have their own cafe, and people can just generally walk in and play a game quickly for 2 or 3 hours. And then they at least have an experience for the first time.
Many people have started out online on Discord. Thanks to Discord, and mainly we are eternally grateful to online dice, without which, we wouldn't have done anything. There are many people who are living in the same cities, and they just decided to just meet up and play some games to see what actual, like playing across the table looks like.
Yeah, there's definitely a different energy to playing in person.
There's a different energy, exactly. And you use a multitude of things for your minis. Because at one point I started using gummy bears.
Oh, that's great.
I've also used a Scrabble board with Jenga tiles to compensate for terrain, which was like a game changer for me. Like, hey, Scrabble board, there's already so many square boxes that can easily be, used as a sort of a battle map, and then Jenga tiles just for terrain and all of that. So my players really like that.
That's a clever use of your resources. But yeah, it's always a ton of fun to see that homemade charm. As versatile as the online maps and servers and things are, there is a charm to the in-person physical maps that I kind of miss out on with as much as the digital stuff can do. It can't really replicate the feel and charm and the energy of playing in person.
100% agree.
So for my next question, narrowing down to your specific table and games, what systems do you generally play? I know, Anorak, you said that you're working on a Call of Cthulhu campaign. I believe you're in the middle of a D&D campaign for your actual play right now.
3 D&D home games, and I'm on Call of Cthulhu actual play for a different streaming channel called Pantsless Tables. They do a lot of charity streams for a lot of great causes. And along with that, I've experimented with a bunch of systems, masks, then the Adventures in Middle Earth, of course.
Of course.
Yeah. There's Wander Home, there is Mouse Guard, and I've invented my own TTRPG system based on Call of Cthulhu called Frenzy, which is a zombie apocalypse one.
Oh, that's fun.
Yeah, I mean, those are it. And I'm currently looking into something that I can replicate Arcane on, because I've been binging Arcane on Netflix, and I'm absolutely in love with it. And I really want to find a TTRPG that could do that. And also the boys. That is also something that I really want to. So
Of those different systems that you've played, which ones jump out as your favorites, and like what aspects of them do you really connect with?
for me, it is D&D so far. That is mainly because I'm a huge fan of high fantasy.
Gotcha.
The whole battles, the dragons, and all of them. It just speaks to me in a different level. Even because Call of Cthulhu, it's mostly horror, so it's. I mean, while I love it, it's kind of a negative energy in that way. And D&D, it just allows me to just let everything go and just get my creative stuff out.
The heroic power fantasy is definitely, there's something to that, and it's a really exciting thing when everything's working the way that it should. For the other systems that you've tried, is there anything in any of the other systems that you've played that you enjoy that Dungeons and Dragons doesn't provide? Or is it generally still like where you started is where you are most at home?
Yeah, so I mainly do not run D&D. I consider D&D as like a gateway drug.
Absolutely.
That's what I tell all my players or anybody who's new to D&D. Like, D&D is great. Please play it. Get a feel for what TTRPG is. Get your nat 20s. Get that catharsis when you do the final hit or when you crit and all of that. I was completely into D&D. Then I found out all of the rest of the TTRPGs and I started playing them, running them. And I'm currently running a campaign in Dolmenwood, which is an OSE system now. And I really like how it is kind of rules light, but it's also very deadly because, again, it's old school. So you don't get a lot of hit points. The danger is very real. You can die in a couple of rounds if the enemy crits. And then I tried out a lot of Powered by the Apocalypse games and even Carved from Brindlewood games. Like the most recent one I played was The Between by Jason Cordova. And I really liked how he turned backstory into a mechanic in The Between. Like for every time you reveal a part of your backstory, you can increase a degree of success on your rolls. And that's a limited resource that you can use. And I'm like, that is so cool to use backstory as a mechanic. Really, really love that. Also tried out the Cosmere RPG recently and currently planning to run a God Killer campaign, which is in the works. Other systems which are not D20 based, even like Daggerheart, which is D12s, Candle Obscura, and PBTA games which are D6s. I love D6s, especially rolling multiples of them. Like I have a Masks book here, which I really, really want to run a campaign on Masks soon. So, like, yeah, for The Between, using backstory as a mechanic, I feel is really good. Another PBTA games mechanic I like, especially from God Killer, you don't have to roll for it. You do I think it's a mortal move that you can do in God Killer. You don't roll for it. You have to answer a question and then something happens. So I found that like a really cool way of building up a story by involving the player and not just being something like, what do you want to do? But instead giving them leading questions to think about what they want to do. So that's a really, really great mechanic that Connie came up with. And I'm really excited to try that out.
That's awesome. The more narrative-based systems are something that have always really intrigued me. I've only started to dip my toes into some of the other systems that are more rules light and more narrative focused, but it's something that I'm definitely interested in, and I love when it has you really explore in depth those kinds of questions. I know that you mentioned recently that Masks is on your list of systems that you want to get to. Question for both of you. Are there any systems that you have not played yet that you're itching to try?
Oh, so many.
So many.
Oh, God.
There is Dune. I found a Dune TTRPG system that I really want to try. And there's also One Piece and Naruto, a bunch of those that I found. So I really want to try out those as well. But yeah, I have not completely explored the indie systems yet. But I think, I just want to get more hang of the rules of Basin a little bit more because it just speaks to me with the whole Scandinavian lore. So I just want to try that out again.
Yeah, for me, it's one system I really want to run more regularly is Pathfinder, especially with their new core rules out. I heard it's really good. I played a couple of games of Pathfinder now, And I really, I'm starting to like Pathfinder. So that's something that I really want to run a lot of more games in.
Pathfinder is one of the systems that we are considering pivoting to for our second season. We did a mini campaign in Pathfinder, and I've played a couple of one-shots in it. That was actually how I first started out in TTRPGs, before I knew that there was a difference between Pathfinder and Dungeons and Dragons. I had people talking about it and thought, oh, Pathfinder, is that like the website that you go on to play Dungeons and Dragons? And just, it didn't occur to me that it was an entirely different system. That concept just didn't exist for me. But yeah, there's a lot about the system that intrigues me. I like a lot of the promise that it has. I know that it's a more difficult one for a lot of people to get into because of the like nuance and complexity that really attracts some people and puts off some others. It's one of a few that we're looking at potentially adopting when we start up our second campaign. So I'm right there with you. It's a system that I definitely want to do more with.
There is this one spell that I absolutely love in Pathfinder, which is called Coin Shot, which kind of reminds me of this one thing from Brandon Sanderson's Mistborn trilogy, where you just shoot out coins and it does different kinds of damage based on the type of coin you use, copper, platinum, or anything.
Oh, that's fun.
I've homebrewed that. I just brought that into my D&D games as well. I absolutely love that, and I'm actually disappointed that no one uses it.
You hear that, players?
I'm taking notes. So with you like homebrewing and bringing in things from other systems from the outside into your games, is that a thing that you find yourself doing more and more often in your games? Do you rely more on homebrew? Do you rely more on like the base system itself, pre-written stories, your own imagination? I know that was like 4 questions in one, but
I rely a lot on homebrew, actually. I create my own homebrew monsters. I create my own homebrew magic items. There are a bunch of homebrew spells that I create. I consult the monsters of the multiverse mostly if I need some canon monsters, but other than that, it's just the homebrew side. And I'm really grateful for D&D Beyond for that. The create monster page that they have. I could just create any homebrew monster on that, and I just can put it on AppVTT for myself.
Hey, Anorak, why don't you go create yourself there? You're the evil DM.
What makes you think I haven't done that already?
Fantastic. I absolutely love reskinning existing monsters and like changing up the flavor of things. I've introduced a bunch of original items into our game and different unique mechanics. One of my favorite ones that's been a go-to for a huge chunk of our campaign was a thing we call Devil's Bargains. So at any time, if you fail a roll or if an enemy succeeds a roll that you, for the story, desperately need to go the other way, you can petition to the GM to make a devil's bargain. If the GM accepts, you instantly succeed on that roll, and then the DM gets a nat 1 that they can keep in their back pocket and replace any roll of yours with down the line in the future.
I'm a yoink this.
He's going to yoink that. Even I'm going to yoink. That's... Oh man, that is so evil. That is so nefarious. I love it. I love it.
It's been a ton of fun and has led to some like really good dramatic gameplay moments and has been a major linchpin in a lot of the direction that the story beats have taken. But yeah, doing things like that. I take a lot of stuff from video games that I've played that's like, oh, I really like this mechanic. I'm going to try to imitate that in the game and do something like that.
Take a lot for flavor purposes. For example, there is this one K-drama show called Goblin or Guardian on Netflix.
Yeah.
I've taken the whole death concept from that. And also there's this book called The Midnight Library. So I've just taken the whole death concept from both of them, where, once a character dies, they just find themselves in a library with a book that represents each and every choice they make. And they have a choice, even if they are being revivified, it's up to the dead PC's choice if they want to come back to life or if they just want to pass on.
That's great.
It did lead to a lot of dramatic moments, but it also led to them purposely dying so that they could see their loved ones.
God damn it!
I really like that. We've we've played around with life and death quite a lot in our show, which it being in Victorian England and like a gothic horror setting, it's a lot of undead. So vampires, zombies, things like that are mostly what we deal with, a lot of ghost type stuff, but really playing with those bounds between life and death and exploring those aspects of the characters are a ton of fun. A thing that we've started doing recently, whenever characters go into death saving throws, as their life is flashing before their eyes, I have them narrate something from their past and from their backstory that we haven't gotten to explore in the game, as like memories of their life are flashing before their eyes.
Interesting.
That is so dramatic.
Other thing that we've started doing recently is they could choose to willingly fail a death save, and in exchange, they can get back up and do one thing, an action, a bonus action, or a movement that is not healing. So they still have a little bit of agency to be able to like push themselves that little bit further and like make a last desperate on death's door gambit.
Ooh, that's good.
Playing around with those high stakes is where like the real juicy parts of the story come from.
Hey, it's all about negotiating, right? Like you're constantly negotiating with your players. Like you're giving them an option. Like, hey, here's the offer. You get this and I get this. You get a chance to do something, and in turn, I get to put your character in jeopardy. I mean that's a very negative way of saying it, but yeah, as evil DMs.
Dan, I got a question for you. So you said you worked on a lot of homebrew stuff, right? Has any of them come back to bite you in the ass?
Most of them.
Most of them.
I would say almost everything has come back to bite me in the ass in some way, shape, or form.
Exactly.
The first time that one of my players actually engaged with the Devil's Bargain rule that we set up, they baited me into a scenario where I'm going to do something ridiculous that I can afford to fail more than you can afford to let me fail, so that you waste that nat 1.
Oh, wow.
That's really the only time that ever happened. From then on out, I was able to stretch out the spans of time enough and let them get away with more and more, and basically let enough time pass, not for them to forget about them, but for it to not be top of mind.
Yeah.
Before starting to cash those in. Another thing that kind of came back to bite me, a homebrew item that I introduced is an enchanted pocket watch that steals time from your future self. You can activate the pocket watch as an action, and you instantly get all the benefits of a long rest. But the next time you would long rest, you get nothing. So you are stealing that rest from your future self.
So many good things to yoink, right?
Yeah,
Raghav?
yeah, exactly.
Sorry, Dan, you were saying.
It led to some really good power gaming moments, but it quickly turned into a death spiral as everyone started accumulating exhaustion from not being able to rest, and we would go really long spans of time with nobody able to get any resources back because they kept putting themselves in debt to this pocket watch to try to make up for the last time they used it. The restriction that I put on the pocket watch immediately was you can't use it twice in a row. You have to let a long rest go by where you get nothing before you can use it again. But it so quickly spiraled out of control to everyone being in really dire straits and just never having anything because they kept abusing it.
I mean, you get two spectrums of players. One, you can get someone who can bend the rules in a way that the DM hasn't thought of it. And on the other side, you have like players who didn't think it all the way through. And you're like, well, them's the breaks. What you gonna do? It's a magic item that I use. It's a coin toss. Everybody has it. You can toss it, and on this turn, you can either get a nat 20 or a nat 1. You don't know which. But if you're...
It's basically a D2.
It is a D2, yeah.
I love that.
They have used it a couple of times, and it's always a tense moment. You're tossing a coin. You're either gonna succeed critically or you're gonna fail critically. So that's another dramatic moment that is up there through a magic item.
Yeah, I love that. And we'll probably be stealing that from you.
Hell yeah.
This is great. And like the stealing and sharing of ideas and advice and information is one of my favorite things that I get from chatting with people in this format and with interviewing people. So I will toss back on the two of you for your interview show. What are some of the things that have stuck out to you the most from the interviews that you've had? Any like piece of wisdom or like a thing that you've stolen to apply to your shows, or like a particular interesting moment of insight that you've gotten from the interviews that you've done on your show?
There is a lot. Actually, we've learned. Every single guest of ours was completely unique, and we've learned a lot from them. We've learned about how you can create new systems, how maps are drawn, sensitivity in TTRPG fields, safety tools, and a lot more. There is like I've learned a lot about DMing over the course of the podcast as well. And every single guest, it keeps it doesn't the bar doesn't drop. They just keep raising the bar for us.
Exactly. So I wouldn't say there's any particular thing. There are a few things. For example, the kind of people that are in the TTRPG community. There are so many different kinds of ways of playing that people are applying. Like one of my favorite podcasts these days to listen to is The Heart is a Dungeon. They won like several awards recently. I got to know them because of Crit Awards and because of all the other guests that we had on our podcast. And what has basically, been my experience is that is a Jon Snow kind of experience. Like I know nothing. Well, technically everybody knows something, and it's that accumulation of knowledge that we have taken. I can't exactly pinpoint it. Like I've taken this from this person, I've taken this from that person. But it's like Raghav said, it's like multitudes. We're working in multitudes. We are taking bits and pieces. Maybe we're talking to a game designer, but the thing that we have taken it is not from like a game design perspective, but it's about how they're involving the players in the game. So again, it's not really specific. It's more of a general thing that we have taken away, but I feel like it has drastically improved in our games.
Oh, I can understand that completely. I'm always amazed by how much there is still to learn. I always take something useful from every one of these conversations that I come away from. And like the more systems that I try out, the better that I get at DMing Dungeons and Dragons, the more that I experience other other games and other media, the more ideas that I get for things I can incorporate to make the show better. It's really great being able to communicate, work with people, get that knowledge, and get those different perspectives. So with that being said, I do want to thank you two for coming on and like chatting with me and having all that. We're starting to run up on time, so I want to circle back around to your show again. So for the Infinite Tavern, for anybody wanting to check out your show, where would you suggest that they start? Do you have a particular interview or episode that you would point to as a really good introduction to you?
I'd say one start could be at the first episode. Who are we, what are we, and why are we? We just decided to just introduce ourselves and just go with the flow. And I think another good episode to jump into would be from the second season when we started our video podcasts, where the energy is again at an all-time high because it's videos, so we have an image to keep up. So yeah, so it's a high energy one. So you'd be introduced to a lot more faces, more guests.
From all over the world.
Yeah, exactly.
So I think from the second season onwards, you can pick a point from, either Brotherwise Games or in fact, even our latest episode with Leona, although it's the latest episode, it's still a good point of, taking off.
At this point, any episode, you could just jump in and see if you like it.
Yeah.
There would be a couple of references to the older episodes, but other than that, we just discuss with different creators about what they do and all of that.
It's a bunch of one-shots.
Exactly.
It's not a campaign.
It's an anthology.
Yeah, it's an anthology.
That definitely has its pros. So with everything that you've put in place, are there any things that you've got coming up that you're particularly excited about? I know that you're doing some actual play stuff. I know that you've said that you've got some campaigns that you're looking forward to getting to. What projects are ahead that you're excited to share with people?
We are looking into a lot more guests. We have a bunch of amazing people lined up, and there is an actual play going on. There is one episode that is out so far as we speak, and there will be more episodes that are coming in. It's called The Fables of the Folk. It's a DM by our second guest in the podcast, Purna, and yeah, I was a player in that along with a bunch of others. And yeah, it was an amazing one. It happens in the Feywild, and it goes to an absolute, the highest level of unhinged that you could imagine. Yeah. And what else do we have, Aman?
I think by the time this episode has come out, the latest interview episode, one with another friend of the podcast, Victor, will have come out. He's running a Kickstarter for his campaign setting that is out. So that should be out by the time this episode comes out. And like Anorak said, we have a bunch of guests lined up that we couldn't get to in this year, but we're absolutely looking forward to getting to ASAP during the New Year's.
We started in Jan, and 2024 has been an amazing year for the Infinite Tavern.
Absolutely. It was the year, and we are trying to step it up into next year as well.
All right. Well, that is very exciting. Before we come to a close, is there anything that we didn't touch on that you want to add or cover before we wrap up?
I think, there is this one thing that we do in our podcast, something that I would want to do. What's your favorite moment in your whole experience as a DM? What would you think is the favorite moment in D&D or any other TTRPGs? It's something that we ask every one of our guests. So
this is the Infinite Tavern podcast now, Dan.
Yeah, we've taken it over.
We've taken over.
Well, I'm happy to jump into this one. This is a minor spoiler for DnDark, but there's a moment that to me is like emblematic of why I play TTRPGs. So a lot of the cast members are people that I did theater with, and I come from a bit of an acting background. And one of our players, which I've brought this up a couple of times as like a go-to example of things I love about this hobby. One of our players, Daniel, who plays Imhotep the Mummy, in doing theater in high school, a thing that he talked to me about was that he always struggled with internalizing his characters. The way that it was described, he would kind of put on the characters like a costume without really examining like their inner lives, how they feel, and kind of struggled to get into characters' head and would sort of do an imitation of what they look like rather than like living in them and inhabiting them. And there was a moment that was a huge character defining moment for him. Essentially, the setup was we did kind of the movie Night at the Museum. We did that kind of a setup. We had them go to the British Royal Museum. All of the exhibits were coming to life because of an ancient Egyptian scroll that was in there that was kind of tied to his mission. He was getting ancient Egyptian scrolls of power to reclaim a bit of lichdom and necromancy type energy. And at the base of the museum was a mummy exhibit that allegedly had the pharaoh that he had served in ancient times that he held a bit of a grudge on. And he was hearing the voices of the gods speak to him, telling him that in order to like claim the power of the scroll, he would need to destroy the heart of the mummy lord at the base of this museum. And I did a bait and switch with him where allegedly it was the pharaoh that he had served that was the mummy at the base of the museum. It was not, in fact, the pharaoh. It was his wife, who was the impetus for him becoming a mummy in the first place and was like the central linchpin of his backstory. And I brought in a guest player to play his wife for that session in that scene. And I dropped that reveal on him. And then because of scheduling, we had to take like 3 weeks off. And so he was just sitting with that for a while, worked through that scene with the guest player to build out what their history with each other was and get their relationship dynamic going. And then doing that actual session, it was one of the best sessions of our show. And he came away from that telling me, I get it now. I've always struggled with being able to internalize characters, but now I finally understand. And like that was a breakthrough acting moment for him. And so that to me is one of the biggest victories that I've had with the show. There's a couple of other moments like that will stand out to me as like all-time victories, but that to me is the biggest emblem of this is why I do this hobby and this show, being able to like share that moment and be a part of that, see how it's affecting him, be affected by it myself. It was like a runaway thing. Is like, this is an all-time great moment.
That is amazing. I love that.
That is
I love
crazy.
everything about that.
Unless you guys have anything else, we'll go ahead and wrap it up there. Remind us before we go, where can we find your show?
Yeah, you can find our show absolutely anywhere. So we're on Spotify, we're on Google Podcasts, we're on Amazon, we're on YouTube as well right now. And yeah, if you want to follow us, we're on Blue Sky, Twitter, and Instagram. Along with that, if you want to join the tavern to find me or Aman, you can find the Discord invite on the link tree.
All right, excellent. I will be sharing those links in the description of this episode. So thank you both again so much for coming on and chatting with me.
Thank you for having us over. It was so much fun.
It was a pleasure and an honor.
This was an absolute blast. So one more time, everyone, I'm Danger Dangers. This has been Table Talk, and I hope you enjoyed what we brought to the table. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Table Talk, created, hosted, and edited by myself, Danger Dangers, with artwork by Jordan Nelson. Our guests this episode were Amaan and Anorak from the Infinite Tavern. Links to their show can be found in the episode description. If you're interested in being a guest on the show, reach out to us at dndarkpodcast@gmail.com. Our theme song and outro was created by Jeremy Vellucci. Check out more of his works on Instagram at JeremyVellucci_Wreck of Time. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you next time we have a guest take a seat at the table.